The emergency transmission reached Earth on a frequency that hadn't been used in over 4 months. President Sarah Chun stood in the command center deep beneath Geneva, watching as the desperate plea from Chancellor Vextar played on the main screen. The crystalline leader's form flickered through colors of fear and humiliation as he spoke. To the human leadership, we formally request immediate assistance. The situation has become ... critical. Our losses are approaching 30% of inhabited worlds. We acknowledge that our previous treatment of humanity was inadequate. We are prepared to discuss new terms for cooperation. Admiral Martinez, who had been recalled from the outer territories to oversee Earth's defenses, shook his head grimly. 30%. They've lost 30% of their worlds and only now admit they need us. How long until the Devourers reach human space? President Chun asked. At their current consumption rate, 6 weeks, replied Dr. Rebecca Torres, Earth's leading xenobiologist and the architect of the classified Prometheus Protocol. Maybe 8 if they slow down to fully harvest the core worlds? Chun watched the tactical display showing the advancing tide of red markers. The Devourers had consumed 47 worlds in 3 months, each conquest making them stronger, more adaptive, more dangerous. The galactic community's most advanced military technologies had proven worse than useless. They actively fed the enemy. Ma'am, Admiral Martinez said quietly, the Council still doesn't know about Prometheus, do they? Chun shook her head. 3 years ago, when the human early warning systems first detected the void signals, Dr. Torres had presented a terrifying analysis to the Human Defense Council. The signals matched theoretical models of what scientists called biological imperialism, species that had evolved to consume and assimilate others, growing stronger with each conquest. The galaxy's civilized species, accustomed to diplomatic solutions and energy-based warfare, would be helpless against such an enemy. That's when Prometheus had been born, a classified project involving every human colony, every scientist, every military engineer. While the galactic community dismissed human warnings and technology, humanity had spent 3 years preparing for a war unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. Admiral, Chun said finally, initiate Phase 1 of Prometheus. I want the first battle groups ready within 12 hours. Yes, ma'am. And the Council? Chun looked once more at Chancellor Vextar's desperate transmission. Send them coordinates for a meeting at the Cerberus system. Tell them if they want our help, they'll accept our terms. The human fleet that emerged from hyperspace at Cerberus Station was unlike anything the galactic community had ever seen. Gone were the familiar designs of human vessels, the practical, angular ships that had served in joint operations for decades. These new ships were predatory, their hulls black as void space and covered in strange, geometric patterns that seemed to bend light around them. Chancellor Vextar and the surviving Council members had arrived in a ragtag collection of refugee vessels, their once mighty fleets reduced to desperate remnants. When Ambassador Elena Vasquez materialized on the station's main deck, she looked exactly the same as she had 3 months ago. But the beings she faced were broken shadows of their former selves. Ambassador, Chancellor Vextar began, his crystalline form flickering with shame, we were wrong about humanity's value to the galactic community. We formally request— You misunderstand, Elena interrupted, her voice calm but steel-hard. We're not here because you finally acknowledged our worth. We're here because in 6 weeks, the Devourers will reach human space, and we prefer to fight them as far from our civilians as possible. The Council members exchanged glances. Ambassador Thexeni spoke up, her usual arrogance replaced by desperate hope. Then you'll help us retake the fallen worlds? We'll destroy the Devourers, Elena corrected. What happens to your governments afterward is not our concern. You made it clear that humanity's role was to die for your protection? Fine. But this time, you'll follow our orders without question. Or you can face extinction alone. Before anyone could respond, alerts began sounding throughout the station. The Devourers had detected the gathering of ships and were moving to investigate. Admiral Martinez's voice crackled over the communications array. Multiple bioship contacts approaching. Ada, 4 hours. All civilian vessels begin immediate evacuation. So soon? Chancellor Vextar's form flickered with panic. We need time to coordinate, to plan. We've had 3 years to plan, Elena said coldly. Dr. Torres, initiate Prometheus Phase 2. Dr. Rebecca Torres activated her personal communicator, sending coded signals to human vessels throughout the system. Immediately, the strange geometric patterns on their hulls began to glow with a soft blue light. Space around the human fleet started to shimmer as if reality itself was bending. What is that? Demanded Ambassador Thexany. Something you thought was primitive, Elena replied. Kinetic warfare taken to its logical extreme. The first Devourer bioships dropped out of hyperspace in their typical formation, a coordinated swarm of living vessels that moved with perfect unity. There were 67 of them, each the size of a battlecruiser, their organic hulls pulsing with absorbed energy from their last meal. They had consumed a Vorthan colony fleet just days before, adding its bio-neural networks to their collective intelligence. Admiral Martinez watched them approach from the bridge of the UHSS Prometheus, humanity's first true warship built specifically for fighting the Devourers. Target acquisition complete. All ships, weapons free. Remember, no energy weapons, no shields, nothing they can absorb or learn from. This is old-school physics, people. Let's show them what momentum transfer really means. The human ships opened fire with weapons the galaxy hadn't seen for centuries, mass drivers, railguns, and kinetic torpedoes that relied purely on velocity and mass to deliver devastating force. But these weren't primitive weapons, they were kinetic systems so advanced that they bordered on science fiction. The first salvo struck the lead, bioships at a significant fraction of light speed. The Devourer's adaptive hulls, evolved to absorb energy and learn from technological weapons, had no defense against pure momentum. Organic tissue, no matter how advanced, still followed the laws of physics. When a tungsten rod traveling at 30% light speed struck a bioship, the result wasn't adaptation, it was catastrophic structural failure. The Devourer formation wavered as 7 of their largest vessels simply disintegrated. But they adapted quickly, beginning evasive maneuvers and attempting to close to melee range, where they could use their organic weapons. That's when Admiral Martinez activated Prometheus's secret weapon. Gravity mines. Deploy, he commanded. Space around the Devourer fleet suddenly twisted as dozens of hidden devices activated. The gravity mines were humanity's most classified technology, artificial black holes contained in quantum bubbles, deployed like depth charges and remotely detonated. When they activated, they created localized gravitational distortions that no amount of biological adaptation could overcome. The effect was immediate and devastating. Bioships caught in the gravity wells were stretched and compressed beyond their structural limits. Those that tried to flee found their flight paths bent back into the kill zones. Within minutes, the entire Devourer force was either destroyed or trapped helplessly in gravitational prisons. On Cerberus Station, the galactic leaders watched in stunned silence as humanity systematically annihilated an enemy that had seemed unstoppable. Dr. Torres activated her display, showing real-time tactical analysis. The Devourers evolved to fight technological species, she explained clinically. They absorb energy, learn from weapon signatures, adapt to tactics. But they never encountered anything like USA species that perfected kinetic warfare and gravitational manipulation specifically to counter their advantages. Chancellor Vextar's crystalline form flickered rapidly through confusion colors. You prepared for this specific enemy? How? Because we listened to our own warnings, Elena said simply. 3 years ago, our sensors detected the void signals. We knew something like this was coming. While you dismissed our concerns and rejected our defensive proposals, we spent every day preparing for the war you said would never come. The cleanup operation took 6 hours. Human ships methodically hunted down every remaining bioship fragment, ensuring none could escape to warn the main Devourer force. When it was over, Admiral Martinez transmitted his tactical assessment to all vessels. Phase 2 complete. Enemy formation destroyed with 0 human casualties. Proceeding to Phase 3, offensive operations against primary threat concentration. Over the following weeks, the human war machine demonstrated capabilities that revolutionized galactic understanding of warfare. They deployed gravity bombs that could sterilize entire sectors, kinetic missiles that struck with the force of natural disasters, and boarding teams equipped with weapons designed specifically for fighting adaptive biological entities. Most importantly, they fought with a coordination and ruthless efficiency that the galaxy's civilized species couldn't comprehend. Where other militaries had complex chains of command and bureaucratic decision-making, human forces operated with the smooth precision of a single organism. They didn't debate tactics or hold committee meetings, they identified threats. The first sign that something was wrong came from the Kepler station's automated systems. Without human technicians to maintain the sophisticated quantum sensors, the equipment had been deteriorating for 3 months. What the Etherian replacement crew didn't realize was that their bioneural interfaces were incompatible with human-designed hardware, creating blind spots in their monitoring grid. Sarandar watched the displays with growing unease. The readings made no sense. Massive gravitational distortions appearing and disappearing at the edge of detection range, energy signatures that defied classification, and something else that made her delicate features pale with fear. Complete radio silence from the Outer Rim survey fleets. "Contact the hegemony patrol ships," she ordered her technician. "Request status updates from sectors 7 through 12. The response came back within minutes. No response from any Outer Rim patrol supervisor. Communications appear to be completely severed. Before Sarandar could process this information fully, the station's emergency klaxons began wailing. The main display lit up with contact markers, dozens of them, massive beyond belief, moving at impossible speeds toward the galactic edge. "By the light," whispered her sensor operator. "These readings, each contact is larger than a battlecruiser. There must be hundreds of them." Sarandar activated the emergency transmission protocols, sending urgent warnings to the Galactic Council. But as she watched the display, she realized with growing horror that the contacts weren't slowing down. They were accelerating, moving toward the first inhabited systems with predatory purpose. The Vorthan colony of Axis Prime was the first to die. The attack came without warning, without communication attempts, without any of the protocols that civilized species followed when encountering others. The Devourers emerged from hyperspace in a formation that spoke of terrifying coordination, hundreds of bioships that looked like they had been grown rather than built, all teeth and hunger and alien purpose. Governor Nextel had barely enough time to send a desperate distress signal before the Devourers fell upon his world. The defense platform's sophisticated Vorthan technology that had protected the colony for decades lasted less than 10 minutes. The bioships seemed to consume energy weapons, growing stronger with each shot fired at them. The planetary shields held for exactly 17 minutes. What followed was beyond most species' capacity to comprehend. The Devourers didn't simply destroy, they consumed. Buildings, technology, life forms, even the basic elements that made up the planetary crust. They stripped Axis Prime down to its molten core in a matter of hours, then moved on to the next system, leaving behind nothing but empty space where a world of 2 billion souls had once thrived. The distress signal reached the Galactic Council 18 hours later. Chancellor Vexstar's crystalline form flickered rapidly through colors indicating extreme agitation as he processed the impossible reports. "Confirm these readings," he commanded his aide. "A planet cannot simply disappear," but the confirmations kept coming. Long-range sensors showed the Axis Prime system completely stripped of matter. Where once there had been a thriving world, mining stations, and defensive installations, now there was only void. "Mobilize the defense fleets," Chancellor Vexstar ordered. "Deploy everything we have to intercept these Devourers." The first major engagement took place at the Kronos defense line, a series of heavily fortified space stations designed to protect the inner systems. Admiral Kekstar commanded a fleet of 200 ships Krolian biocruisers, Aetherian light ships and Vorthan dreadnoughts, representing the finest military technology the galaxy possessed. They lasted 4 hours. The battle was a massacre that defied military comprehension. The Devourers moved with perfect coordination, their bioships flowing like a living tide around the defensive positions. Energy weapons seemed to feed them, making them stronger and more aggressive. Kinetic weapons barely scratched their organic hulls. Most horrifying of all, when Devourer ships took damage, they would merge with nearby vessels. Combining their mass and capabilities into even larger threats, Admiral Kekstar died when his flagship was literally consumed, the bioship's hull opening, like a mouth to swallow the massive dreadnought whole. His final transmission was a string of tactical data that painted a picture of hopeless odds. They adapt to everything we throw at them. Conventional weapons are useless. We need. The transmission cut off as the Devourer bioship began, digesting the Admiral's vessel, adding its technology and crew to its own capabilities. As reports of the disaster reached the Galactic Council, panic began to set in. Species that had lived in peace for millennia suddenly faced an enemy that their advanced, civilized methods couldn't even slow down. Worse, the Devourers were learning from each encounter, adapting their tactics, growing stronger with each world they consumed. "Where are the humans?" Ambassador Thexeni asked during an emergency session, her usual arrogance replaced by naked fear. Surely this crisis is sufficient to bring them back to the Alliance? Chancellor Vextar had already tried. The human colonies weren't responding to diplomatic communications. Trade ships approaching human space were turned away by automated defense platforms. Every attempt to contact Earth or the major human worlds met with the same cold response. Human space is closed to non-human traffic. This message will not be repeated. "They're not coming back," announced Dr. Veltar, the Council's chief military advisor. "Our intelligence suggests they've withdrawn completely into their territory and activated some kind of defensive network we've never seen before. Then, we fight without them," Chancellor Vextar declared. But his crystalline form was flickering with colors that betrayed his fear. "Surely our combined fleets can." The emergency alarms cut him off. New reports were flooding in. 17 more worlds had gone silent in the past 6 hours. The Devourers were accelerating their advance, and conventional forces seemed powerless to stop them. Dr. Veltar pulled up a tactical display that made the council chamber fall silent. Red markers showed Devourer positions advancing like a plague across the galactic map. At their current rate of consumption, they would reach the core worlds within weeks. "We need to evacuate the outer colonies," Dr. Veltar said quietly. "Begin pulling back all civilian populations to defended systems." But even as evacuation orders went out, it became clear that the Devourers were targeting fleeing ships. Their bio-vessels moved faster than most civilian craft, hunting down refugee convoys with systematic efficiency. The lucky ones died quickly. The unlucky ones were captured alive, their biosignatures adding to the Devourers' collective understanding of galactic species on New Meridia. Families huddled in underground shelters as the sky burned with the light of battles in orbit. The planet's defense fleet 12 ships that had seemed adequate for protecting a peaceful agricultural world had been overwhelmed in minutes. Now, Devourer bioships descended through the atmosphere like living meteors, their organic hulls pulsing with absorbed energy from the planet's power grid. Sarah Valkos clutched her younglings close as the ground shook with each impact. Through the shelter's reinforced windows, she could see the bioships beginning their harvest. Buildings dissolved under streams of organic acid. Plant life withered and died as the Devourers drained the very nutrients from the soil. Worst of all, she could hear the screams of those caught outside as the bioships began consuming any life forms they encountered. "Where are the human ships?" her eldest youngling asked, his voice trembling with terror. "Why aren't they coming? To help us like they did during the Crystal Wars?" Sarah couldn't answer. How could she explain that the humans were gone because species like hers had made it clear their protection wasn't wanted? How could she tell her children that the very people who might have saved them had been driven away by arrogance and ingratitude? Shelter's communication array crackled to life, broadcasting the Council's latest desperate plea. All available ships converge on the Meridia system. We cannot allow the Devourers to establish a foothold in the inner colonies, but everyone in that shelter knew the truth. There were no available ships left. The defense fleets had been consumed or scattered. The great civilizations that had ruled the galaxy for millennia were crumbling before an enemy they couldn't understand, couldn't communicate with, and couldn't defeat. As the bioships began breaking through the shelter's defenses, Sarah Valkos found herself thinking of Ambassador Elena Vasquez's final words at the Council. "The only thing I regret is how long it took us to realize we were never welcome here to begin with." Now, as her world died around her, Sarah understood the true cost of that arrogance. The humans weren't coming to save them. Nobody was coming to save them. They had rejected their protectors, and now they would face the consequences alone. In the depths of space, more Devour bioships emerged from the void between galaxies. Their ancient hunger had been awakened by the silence where once human sensors had stood watch. They had found a galaxy ripe for consumption, defended by species too civilized to comprehend the kind of total warfare needed to stop them. The harvest had only just begun, and there was so much more to devour. The Galactic Council chamber hummed with the low-frequency vibrations of 1,000 different species, each contributing their unique biological signatures to the cacophony. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood at the human delegation podium, her dark eyes scanning the assembled representatives with growing frustration. 3 years she had served here. 3 years of watching humanity's contributions be dismissed, their warnings ignored, their innovations mocked. "The human proposal for defensive grid enhancement is once again rejected," announced Chancellor Vexstar, his crystalline form refracting the chamber's pale light. "The Council finds their methods unnecessarily aggressive and their technology primitive." Elena's jaw tightened. Around her, delegates from the hegemony worlds whispered, among themselves in languages that sounded like breaking glass and distant thunder. The Crolian ambassador's tentacles writhed in what Elena had learned was their equivalent of laughter. Even the peaceful Aetherian delegates, usually respectful to all species, seemed to regard the humans with barely concealed disdain. "Primitive?" Elena stepped forward, her voice carrying clearly through the translation matrix. "Our early warning systems detected the void signals 6 months ago. Our analysis shows a 93% probability of extragalactic threat convergence within the next standard cycle. Yet you dismiss this because our ships don't use your bioneural networks? Young species often see threats where none exist," replied Ambassador Thexany of the Crolian Dominion, her blue-black skin shimmering with condescension. "Your kind has been in space for barely 2 centuries. We have maintained peace for over 10,000 years. Peace built on the backs of human sacrifice," Elena shot back, her composure finally cracking. "Who stopped the Vorthan expansion? Human fleets. Who ended the Crystal Wars? Human mediators. Who died by the millions when the plague ships came from the Outer Rim?" The chamber fell silent except for the ambient hum of life support systems. Chancellor Vexstar's crystalline features remained impassive. The humans served their purpose in those conflicts. However, the galaxy has evolved beyond the need for such crude methods. Elena looked around the chamber one final time, seeing confirmation in every alien face. They saw humanity as useful tools, nothing more. Expendable weapons to be deployed when their civilized methods failed. She thought of her daughter back on New Geneva. Of the billions of humans spread across their modest 67 worlds. Of the men and women who had died believing they were protecting something greater than themselves. "Very well," she said quietly, but her words carried to every corner of the massive chamber. "If that's how you see us, then humanity is done playing the role of galactic enforcer." The translation matrix buzzed with confused chatter. Several delegates leaned forward, uncertain they had understood correctly. Elena activated her personal communicator, sending a burst transmission on secure frequencies to every human world. "Every fleet commander, every diplomatic outpost. This is Ambassador Vasquez, authorization Omega 77. Execute Protocol Omega. All human personnel are to withdraw immediately from Galactic Council territories, operations, and alliances. Effective immediately, humanity is declaring neutrality. The chamber erupted in shocked exclamations. Chancellor Vextar's crystalline form flickered with angry red light. Ambassador, you cannot simply... We can and we are. Elena gathered her materials with deliberate calm. For 3 years, I've watched you treat human lives like they're worthless while demanding our protection when threats emerge. You want to handle galactic security with your advanced, civilized methods? Be our guest. As Elena walked toward the exit, her steps echoing in the suddenly quiet chamber, Ambassador Vexini called out, "You will regret this decision, human. When you come crawling back, begging for readmission to civilized society," Elena paused at the chamber doors, looking back one final time. "The only thing I regret is how long it took us to realize we were never welcome here to begin with." The massive doors sealed behind her with a sound like thunder. Within hours, the exodus began. Human naval vessels disengaged from joint patrol routes, abandoning their posts along the dangerous outer rim sectors. Research stations powered down and evacuated, taking with them decades of accumulated data on deep space phenomena. Trade agreements dissolved as human merchants recalled their fleets to home space. Most significantly, the human early warning network, a sophisticated array of quantum sensors that have protected the galaxy's outer edges for over 50 years went. Dark. Admiral Chun Martinez received Elena's emergency transmission. While his fleet was stationed at Kepler Station, a joint human-Etherean facility monitoring the void between galaxies. His weathered face showed no emotion as he processed the orders, but his bridge crew could see the anger burning in his eyes. "Helm, set course for human space," he commanded. "Signal all ships. We're going home." Admiral, his Etherean liaison, a graceful being named Sarandar, approached cautiously. "Surely this is some kind of diplomatic maneuver? Humanity wouldn't actually abandon their commitments." "Commitments?" Martinez turned, and Sarandar stepped back at the cold fury in the human's expression. "You mean our commitment to die for people who see us as nothing more than attack dogs? Our commitment to sacrifice our children for species that won't even acknowledge our warnings about real threats? But the monitoring stations, the early warning grid without human oversight, how will we detect—" "That's no longer our problem," Martinez interrupted. "Your people are so advanced, I'm sure you'll figure something out." As the human fleet departed Kepler Station, their sophisticated sensor arrays powering down one by one, Sarandar stood alone on the observation deck, watching the ships disappear into hyperspace. For the first time in her long life, she felt afraid. The withdrawal was swift and comprehensive. Human presence simply vanished from galactic civilization overnight. No threats, no demands, no ultimatums, just absence. Trade routes that had relied on human protection found themselves vulnerable to piracy. Research projects lost their most innovative contributors. Most critically, the vast network of early warning stations that humans had built and maintained began to fail without their creators' oversight on New Geneva. President Sarah Chun called an emergency session of the Human Colonial Congress. Representatives from 67 worlds gathered in the Great Assembly Hall, their faces grim with purpose. "The vote is unanimous," President Chun announced after 3 days of debate. "Humanity hereby withdraws from all galactic institutions and alliances. Our borders are closed to non-human traffic. Our forces will defend human space only." "And if they come asking for help?" asked General Morrison, commander of the Human Defense Forces. "Then they'll learn what it means to have turned their backs on humanity," Chun replied coldly. "We offered partnership and received condescension. We offered protection and received ingratitude. From now on, they're on their own." Meanwhile, in the depths of intergalactic space, something ancient stirred. The void between galaxies had been quiet for millions of years. But now, with the human monitoring network offline, there was no one to notice the subtle changes in quantum resonance, the slight fluctuations in dark matter density, the growing whispers of something vast awakening. The devourers had been sleeping, but now they began to wake. And when they moved fast. On Cronus Prime. The Galactic Council met in emergency session. Chancellor Vextar's crystalline form flickered with nervous energy as reports flooded in from across their territory. Pirates operating with impunity. Trade disruption. Most concerning of all, the outer rim sensors showing increasing signs of malfunction. Perhaps we acted hastily, admitted Ambassador Thexany, her usual arrogance replaced by uncertainty. The humans did provide certain ... services. They were useful tools, Chancellor Vextar insisted, but his words lacked conviction. We can replace their functions with superior technology. But as days turned to weeks, it became clear that replacing humanity's contributions would not be simple. The humans hadn't just provided muscle, they had been innovators, problem solvers, the ones who rushed toward danger while others calculated odds. Their absence left a void that no amount of advanced technology seemed able to fill, and in the dark between stars, something moved closer to the galaxy's edge. Drawn by the silence where once there had been vigilant watchers, the devourers had found their prey unguarded at last, and they were hungry after their long sleep. The galaxy was about to learn the true cost of turning its back on humanity.